The Brexit negotiations are getting heated, the Trump Biden election is getting intense, and in the middle of all this, there's a random guy on the internet who's now coming after me and my good friend Emily Hewertson because clearly we're not sound enough for this guy, especially when it comes to the important issue of international trade and diplomacy. So I've got a short audio clip of part of his podcast where he's exposing me and Emily, and but I'm not going to mention his name or his channel name because we don't want to promote him for obvious reasons. But before we do that, actually, I am going to show you the actual guy, so you could get to know him. Prepare yourself. It's more of a preview to see who we are actually dealing with.
Get a dose of the truth. It's your red pill moment. It's time to clear your mind of all the distortions. Did. That's right.
Okay. I love my job. All right. This guy is clearly an expert when it comes to international trade. And, all right. So we got this short clip. I'm going to show you the audio and I'm going to react to it in the middle of it. But yeah, random guy in the internet. This is your red pill moment. Let's go.
But I've got to hold Boris's feet to the fire here, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if I've talked about it once before, but I'm going to call out Mahyar Tousi. I'm going to call out Emily Hewertson. I'm going to call out, what's that other guy who's, I can't remember his name. But there's a whole bunch of conservative commentators on YouTube. And I'm talking...
Whoa. Let's stop you right there. Okay, calling me a Tory YouTuber. I'm not Tory. Calling me and Emily Tory YouTubers. So firstly, I'm not a Tory, I'm a classical liberal, more of a libertarian leaning. Secondly, Emily is not a YouTuber. So I don't know what he's going to do in this video or podcast. So he's going to criticize Emily's YouTube channel and my Toryism. Let's get to it and let's see what it's going to say.
Because you have been lauding Boris's actions in terms of leaving the European Union, and you've not ever held his feet into the fire.
Okay, so there we go. Obviously, I've been supportive of Boris when he ran for leader and also throughout the whole Brexit stuff. Emily obviously is a conservative. She voted for Boris Johnson. Yet, both Emily's Twitter account and my YouTube channel, over the past few months, at least 2/3 of our content is criticizing the government. He's basically accusing us of just being... he's going to say it himself, actually, that we're just tribalists, we just back Boris, never criticize him. I have lost subscribers, Tory subscribers, because they were tribal. They didn't like the fact that I criticized their dear leader, Boris Johnson. And so yeah, let's go to it. It's nonsense.
When it came to the fact that he signed off a deal to get us into the Trans-Pacific Partnership, what does that mean? Higher drug prices. What does that mean? More regulation. What does that mean? It means competitive advantage for bigger-based companies, and it basically restricts and makes it more difficult for small businesses to thrive. Are you happy with that? I hope you're happy with that, because it seems you're silent.
All right, so there we go. Now we're getting technical. Now we're talking about policy. Good, let's go. So... he's mentioning the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which doesn't exist anymore. It's called the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. Obviously, amongst like a number of nations, it's a trade zone essentially, sort of like what CANZUK is trying to do with Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. Sort of like NAFTA between Mexico, Canada, and the US. Not really like the European Union, because single market, the European Union, they're not really trade zones, they're protectionist zones. And he's talking about how obviously getting into these agreements is pro-corporatism and it's going to help big business and drug prices. Yes and no. Most trade deals, this is why I'm actually not necessarily in favor of the way countries currently do trade deals. I'm not in favor of them. Because they're not really free trade deals. They're based on having big companies and corporations lobbying governments to take advantage. That's one. Secondly, I have already talked about this issue a number of times. I don't necessarily like trade zones, free trade areas as a concept, including even when it comes to CANZUK, even when it comes to NAFTA. Technically speaking, I'm not in favor. I prefer bilateral agreements between countries. But we live in a world where everything's now interconnected and governments are getting bigger and bigger, so you have to take advantage of them. But so the argument is not necessarily being pro or against trade zones and all kind of bigger groups like NAFTA or Kanzak or even obviously CPTPP. They seriously need to change that name. And it's not about that. It's about how it's negotiated. So this guy is talking about. He's going to mention it obviously that President Trump came out of TPP, and so TPP collapsed, and then they started it again. They called it Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. Stupid name. And then that's the current situation. He left because the deal that was negotiated was not really in the interest of small businesses in America or ordinary people. It was in favor of, in the interest of big corporations, obviously. But so the problem with it is not the concept of trade zones, it's how they're negotiated. And Trump obviously came out, just like how he did with other agreements that he's had across the world, to force them to come back and obviously negotiate. So they will either come back or they will just leave it or whatever. We shouldn't really criticize the concept. It's the same fear mongering that the Remainers have been creating about the whole UK and US trade deal. If we do that, the NHS will be sold, drug prices will go up, American chicken will turn Brits into zombies. It's not true. It's how you negotiate the deals that happens, especially obviously if the UK gets into it. He's going to talk about how the UK is getting into this, which is nonsensical because I'm going to react to it.
Deafening. Your silence is absolutely deafening. The fact you would say nothing in relation to that. I don't want you to be these champions for Bojo and champions for Brett. You've got to be able to criticise stuff when it needs to be criticised.
I just had to stop. Again, as I said, 2/3 of my content recently has been against the government and Boris Johnson.
Put us in the TPP. I reckon they did it. It was a panic option. They were scurrying around trying to get trade deals done, and now we're into the TPP. So,
all right. So, firstly, TPP doesn't exist. Secondly, we're not in it. He just said we're now into the TPP. So, what's happened is obviously we now signed the trade deal with Japan, and it's gonna create a pathway, a route for the UK to negotiate with the CPTPP. To potentially join as a partner, and because it is in our interest. All the big players are there, they're trading each other, and so if we are able, because the good thing about these areas, like Kanzak as well, if Kanzak happens, obviously Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK creating a partnership, it's not going to be protectionist like the single market with their customs union arrangements. Because each country can still freely trade with other countries. They can still sign their own trade deals. They could still set their own regulations and standards, unlike when you're inside the European Union. The problem with the whole EU and we wanted to leave was because we couldn't actually have our own laws. We couldn't have our own trade policies. So as long as the UK negotiates a good deal with these guys and give them our red lines, then that's absolutely fine. I'm in favour. Not against it. But if they get into some sort of negotiation which will only be in the interest of big corporations as usual, then, and if it damages our freedoms when it comes to small businesses, entrepreneurs and ordinary people, then I will be against it. It's called being objective and logical instead of promoting or, I don't know, selling red pills. So yeah, this guy is an interesting character, obviously. He's I don't know. I'm not really sure. I'm sure he means well, but he clearly hasn't done his research into me or Emily Hewertson too well. Calling us tribalists, not helping. Emily actually has received a lot of hate recently on Twitter from the conservative side and also from the left, for some reason, at the same time for not backing Boris Johnson on the lockdown issues. So the moral of the story is, before you do something, do a bit of research. Secondly, don't see the world as some sort of black and white concept. Things are complicated. Try to be objective. Don't be tribalist. And try not to drink or take whatever that guy's taking, because it's not really good for you guys. But thanks again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to have, tonight, I might either have a members-only video podcast. If you want to be a member, check out the link in the description, Mahyar Tousi /join. Or I might just do a live stream at about 9 p.m. But I'll let you guys know. You guys will get a notification. Thanks again for watching. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and I'll see you guys in the next video.